I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped inside. The house was too quiet, not peaceful, empty, like something had been taken out of it. And then I saw her, sitting on the edge of the couch, shoulders shaking, trying to cry without making a sound. My wife has never been good at hiding pain, but this was different. I dropped my keys slowly, like any sudden noise might shatter whatever fragile thing was holding her together. "Hey," I said softly. She looked up, and for a split second I didn't recognize her. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale, like she hadn't slept in days. But when she saw me, she forced a smile, forced it. "I'm okay," she said quickly. That was the first lie. Before I could ask anything else, small footsteps came rushing down the hallway. My daughter. She threw herself into my arms like she always does, wrapping her tiny arms around my neck. "Papa," she said, cheerful, unaware. Completely unaware. I held her tighter than usual. "Hey, princess," I whispered. She pulled back and looked at me with those curious eyes. "Mama's sad," she said quietly, as if sharing a secret. I asked her why, but she said it's nothing. I glanced at my wife. She looked away. That was the second lie. That evening felt off. Not broken, just slightly out of place. Like a painting hanging a little crooked on the wall. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt right. Dinner was quiet. My wife barely touched her food. She kept checking her phone, flipping it over when I looked in her direction. "Long day?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. She nodded. "Just tired." Another lie. I didn't push. I've always believed that people open up when they're ready, and she always had eventually. That's how we worked. Trust wasn't something we forced. It was something we built, piece by piece, over years. Or at least, I thought we did. After putting our daughter to bed, I found my wife in the kitchen, staring at nothing. The sink was running, water overflowing slightly, but she didn't seem to notice. I walked over and gently turned it off. "You want to talk?" I asked. For a moment, I thought she might break. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes filled again. But then she shook her head. "It's nothing you need to worry about. Nothing you need to worry about." That sentence stayed with me, because when someone you love says that, it usually means the opposite. That night, she went to bed early. Said she had a headache. I stayed up, sitting in the living room, replaying everything in my head. Every small detail, every glance, every pause. And then something clicked. It wasn't just tonight. She'd been different for days, maybe even weeks. The late replies, the sudden silence during conversations, the way she'd step outside to take certain calls. I had noticed it before, but I ignored it. Because trust makes you blind. I stood up slowly and looked toward the hallway. Then my eyes shifted to the small black device tucked into the corner of the ceiling. The security camera. We installed them last year after a neighbor had a break-in, mostly for peace of mind. We rarely ever checked them. Until that moment, I hesitated. Not because I was afraid of what I might find, but because I was afraid of what it would mean. There's a line you don't cross in relationships, a quiet understanding. Privacy, respect, faith. Checking those cameras felt like stepping over that line. But something inside me, something deep and unsettling, told me I already had one foot across it. I grabbed my phone, opened the app, scrolled back. The footage loaded slowly. At first, everything looked normal. Days filled with routine. My wife moving around the house. Our daughter playing, nothing out of place. I almost laughed at myself. Maybe I was overthinking. And then I saw it. A moment, small, easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. My wife standing in the living room, looking toward the door. Waiting. Not doing anything. Not distracted. Just waiting. I leaned closer to the screen. A few seconds later, there was a knock. My heart started to beat faster. She didn't check who it was. Didn't hesitate. She just opened the door and stepped slightly to the side, letting someone in. But the camera angle didn't show who, only a shadow, just beyond the frame. I felt a strange tightness in my chest. It could be anyone, I told myself. A neighbor, a delivery, a friend. A friend. The word sat heavy in my mind. Because there was one person who had been coming over more often lately. Someone I trusted. Someone who knew our home like his own. Someone who knew us. I fast-forwarded. The footage jumped ahead in small increments. Minutes passed. Then more. They didn't leave. I noticed my wife's posture change, the way she moved, slower, careful, like she was aware of something, or hiding something. I swallowed hard. My hand hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to stop, to close the app, walk into the bedroom, lie beside her, and pretend everything was okay. But the other part, the part that had been whispering all evening, it wouldn't let me. So I kept watching, and then my breath caught in my throat, because the camera angle shifted slightly as my wife walked closer, and for just a fraction of a second, I saw the reflection in the glass cabinet beside the door. Not clearly, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to recognize the shape, the posture, the familiarity. My heart dropped. No, I thought. No, that's not possible. I paused the video, zoomed in. My hands were shaking now. Please, I whispered, not even sure who I was talking to. The image blurred slightly, but the outline remained. And suddenly, every small moment from the past few weeks came rushing back. The extra calls, the subtle distance, the way she avoided certain conversations. And him, the way he'd been around more often. The way he laughed a little too comfortably. The way I never once questioned it. Because I trusted him. Because I trusted them. I sat there in the dark staring at my phone, my entire world slowly rearranging itself into something I didn't recognize. Upstairs, my wife was sleeping. Down the hall, my daughter was dreaming peacefully. And here I was, holding a truth I wasn't ready to face. I exhaled slowly and pressed play again. The footage continued. And just as the figure stepped further into view, I stopped it. I couldn't watch anymore. Not yet, because deep down, I already knew. And I wasn't sure I was ready to see it with my own eyes. Didn't sleep that night. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to the slow rhythm of her breathing. It sounded normal, peaceful, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. Every time she shifted slightly, every time her hand brushed against mine in her sleep, it felt unfamiliar, like I was lying next to a stranger wearing the face of the person I loved. Morning came too quickly. Sunlight slipped through the curtains, soft and warm, completely unaware of the storm sitting quietly in my chest. I got up before she did and went into the kitchen, trying to act normal for our daughter's sake. She came running in, still half asleep, dragging her blanket behind her. "Papa, pancakes?" she mumbled. I smiled. A real one somehow. Of course. For a moment, everything felt okay again. Just a father and his daughter standing in a quiet kitchen making breakfast. I held on to that moment longer than I should have, because I knew it wouldn't last. My wife walked in a few minutes later. She looked better. Or at least she tried to. "Morning," she said softly. "Morning." Our eyes met. There was something there. Not just sadness anymore, but fear. And that told me everything I needed to know. We ate together, the three of us, like we always did. Our daughter talked about school, about her friends, about something small and beautiful that didn't belong in the heaviness of that morning. Neither of us interrupted her. Neither of us said what we needed to say. But silence has a way of speaking louder than words. After breakfast, I offered to drop our daughter off at school. My wife hesitated for a second, just a second, but then nodded. Okay. That hesitation, it stayed with me. The drive was quiet. My daughter hummed softly in the back seat, looking out the window. I watched her through the mirror, memorizing her smile, the way she tapped her fingers against the door. "Papa?" she said suddenly. Are you and Mama okay?" The question hit harder than anything else. I forced a calm tone. "Why do you ask?" She shrugged. "She looks sad. And you look quiet." I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "We're okay," I said gently. "Sometimes grown-ups just have a lot on their minds." She nodded, accepting that answer the way children do. But I knew. She had already felt the shift. I dropped her off, waited until she disappeared through the school gates, and then sat there for a moment. Just breathing, preparing, because when I went back, home, everything was going to change. The house was silent when I returned. Too silent. I stepped inside slowly. "Hey!" I called out. No response. I walked through the living room, the kitchen, the hallway. Empty. Then I noticed something. Her phone was still on the table. She never leaves her phone. A strange unease crept in. I reached for it. I shouldn't have. I knew that. But at that point, lines didn't matter anymore. The screen lit up in my hand, and there it was. A message. Just one. No name saved. Just a number. But I didn't need a name. I can't do this anymore. He's starting to notice. My chest tightened. I stared at the screen, reading it again and again as if the words might change. They didn't. Footsteps behind me. Soft. Careful. I turned around slowly. She was standing there near the hallway, frozen in place. Her eyes dropped to the phone in my hand. And in that moment, everything we had built over the years stood between us, fragile and cracking. I was going to tell you, she said. Her voice trembled. I almost laughed. Were you? I asked quietly. She took a step forward. Please, just let me explain. Explain. Such a simple word for something so heavy. I placed her phone back on the table, gently, like it might break. Who is it? I asked. She hesitated. That hesitation. It hurt more than the truth ever could. Say it, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Tears filled her eyes instantly. And then she said it. His name. The one name I didn't want to hear. My closest friend. The man who had been in our home countless times. The man I trusted without question. For a second, the room felt like it was spinning. I nodded slowly, absorbing it. How long? I asked. She shook her head. It's not what you think. How long? I repeated, firmer this time. A few weeks, she whispered. Weeks, not years, not months, weeks. And somehow, that didn't make it better. It made it worse. Because it meant everything we had, everything we were, had been risked so easily. Did he come here? I asked. She closed her eyes. That was my answer. I exhaled slowly, trying to keep myself steady. No shouting, I said quietly. Our daughter will be home later. My wife broke down completely then, covering her face as she cried. I didn't mean for this to happen, she said through sobs. It happened. I was confused, I was overwhelmed, and he was there, and I wasn't. I interrupted. She shook her head quickly. No, that's not what I meant. But that's what it is, I said. Silence filled the room again. Heavy, unforgiving. I walked past her toward the door. Where are you going? She asked, panic rising in her voice. I paused, my hand on the handle. I need to hear it from him, I said. Please don't, she started, but I had already opened the door. The air outside felt different, colder, clearer. Each step I took felt heavier than the last. I wasn't angry, not in the way people expect. I wasn't shouting or breaking things. I was empty. And that emptiness was far worse. I reached his house faster than I expected. Stood in front of the door I had walked through 100 times before. This time it felt unfamiliar. I raised my hand. Knocked. A few seconds later the door opened. And there he was. My friend. He looked surprised at first. Then he saw my face, and everything changed. He didn't ask why I was there. He didn't pretend. Because he knew. We stood there staring at each other, years of friendship hanging silently between us. I didn't plan this, he said quietly. I almost smiled. Neither did I replied. A long pause. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Was it worth it? He didn't answer. And in that silence, I got the truth. I nodded slowly, feeling something inside me finally settle. Not peace, not closure, just clarity. Without another word, I turned around and walked away. Because some betrayals don't need a reaction. They speak for themselves. And as I walked back home, I realized something I never thought I would. The hardest part wasn't losing them. It was accepting that the life I trusted was never what I believed it was.